Welcome, everybody. This is episode 1 of the Glacier Gamble. Glad to have you here. Today, we're just going to be talking about a few sports topics. It's going to be mainly Madden focused, simply because there are not a lot of things going on in sports outside of the NBA playoffs. NHL is happening, but it's near the end of that. And, just not really a ton to talk about in terms of major sports events. So this will be primarily Madden focused, like I said. Plus, you really don't want to hear me talk about things outside of basketball and football, believe me. So we'll start with some NBA discussion. The playoffs are happening right now. We got the Suns going against the Clippers. We got the Bucks going against the Hawks. Trae Young got hurt at the end of the game. That's huge, but I think he's going to be able to go. There was no signs of swelling that have been reported with his ankle. He's probably going to get that a little bit wrapped up. We obviously don't want to see him get further injured at this point, especially if it could hurt his career, similar to how Grant Hill, that happened to him when he was playing with the Hawks, who currently works for the Hawks. But I think he'll be fine. He'll show up. He'll play. I would be surprised if he doesn't play well, but I'm not going to be surprised if he doesn't score, 30. If he scores 25, that's not going to be surprising at all. I would only be surprised if he goes out there and plays a dud. The Bucks will probably play him a little tighter. Chris Middleton's going to play him pretty tight, knowing that he's injured. They don't have to lock him down with Holiday. They can probably play a little bit softer on him, but he's just going to keep doing Trae things. I do think the series is probably over anyway. This was their chance to kind of go ahead, and when they lost that game, I think that just ended that just caused the Bucks to be able to end this series. Bucks will probably be the representation in the East. I don't know if they can really put up too big of a fight with the Suns or the Clippers. Looks like it's going to be the Suns on the western side. The Bucks have a good matchup in terms of Giannis with any of the wings, but I do think DeAndre Ayton can stay down low and block Giannis's pathway, which will force Giannis to either go mid-range or go out for threes. We know that's not really his game. Mid-range is pretty good, but in terms of where he really excels is in the paint and driving, and that's actually where he tends to facilitate really well. He also has a really good pass right next to, the left wing. I see him standing there and getting a lot of his assists from that area. I do think that the Suns and Clippers are really at an advantage against the Bucks, just simply due to both have better coaches than Budenholzer. Budenholzer, I don't think is a terrible coach, don't get me wrong, but I do think that he is not as good as Ty Lue, and he is not as good as Monty Williams. Just simple as that. When you're going against top teams, you're going to go against the best, and he's just simply not as good as the best. The Bucks, again, represent the East with the Suns and the Clippers. I really think it's time for the Suns to finish this thing up. They won the other night, and the Clippers, even though it was a low-scoring game, the Clippers should have been able to pull it off, and because they weren't, maybe due to a couple bad calls, yeah, you could argue that, but with the Suns playing so poorly, even without those couple bad calls, you should be able to shut it down. They seem to have a little bit better flow without Kawhi, but I do think if Kawhi was there, they'd have had the offensive ability to outscore Phoenix, especially with really no good double matchup. I think Phoenix has a great matchup to defend one wing, but you get both of those ball handling wings of Kawhi and Paul George out there, Phoenix really would have done a much better, or have a much harder time against both of them, which, that happens. That's just, injuries are part of this game, especially with people with injury histories, and it's too bad because a lot of people don't necessarily think Suns Bucks is either interesting or they don't think it's two of the best teams, but you got one team that's been in the playoffs consistently over the past few years in the Bucks, and you have one team that went undefeated in the bubble, which some people thought was a fluke, but it clearly wasn't. They went to the playoffs now, and Chris Paul's addition has made them clearly a top contender, beating what a lot of people thought was one of the best teams in the Lakers and sweeping the Nuggets. You just have two good teams. The Suns wouldn't beat them if it was a fluke, and I think this is proof you have two of the top teams. No matter what the general opinion is, it will be a good series, and I will be watching. I think when it is Bucks versus Suns, it'll probably be It's hard to say, but it would probably be Suns in 6. Obviously, I want to say the Suns will win it in 4, but no, it'll be Suns in 6, and I think the Bucks will put up a good fight. They'll probably win both of their home games, and then the Suns will probably win their home games, and they'll win it all. So it'll be 2-0, and then 2-2, and 4-2. Game over. Other NBA news, we heard today that the Warriors are looking to move on from James Wiseman and the number 7 pick to try to get better now. Smart trying to get a little bit more of a playoff run out of Steph Curry. You're getting Klay Thompson back, and you're really just going to become, hopefully, back to that top seed in the West. Obviously not a 72-73 win team, no matter who they add, but they want to take advantage of Steph before he starts to decline. After this past year, it should be very obvious that he's nowhere near a severe decline. Who do I think they would want to trade for is a good question. The big rumor is that it's Pascal Siakam. I think Siakam is a better shooter than Wiggins. He's a pretty solid defender. Wiggins is, in my opinion, a top wing defender when he wants to. And, Siakam, I think, wants the ball more as opposed to who Wiggins is fine being in this third role that he'll be in once it's Klay and Steph. I really think that if they're going to move on from Wiseman, it should be a big. Yes, I know he didn't do so well in the playoffs, but getting somebody like a Ben Simmons and having him, you give up Wiseman 7, you'll probably want to throw in 14, knowing how much the Sixers like Simmons, but getting somebody who's just a big like him, he would go to the 4. You can get a vet big. You can get somebody like a Dwight Howard that would probably want to come there. You can get somebody to run. You could run the Steph, Wiggins, Klay, Simmons, and a big. I know that's not that doesn't sound very, attractive to a lot of people, but you can't. I don't think Siakam is the right choice. I think he's a great player. I think I would prefer him to get more of an opportunity as a rotation scorer. I think on the Warriors, being a third option doesn't seem like something he's really interested in. That's why I really like how the Warriors are built now. If they get one piece, Simmons is definitely a better option in terms of fit with the team, but in terms of playoff success, Simmons is going to be a liability, so you can't really go with him. I personally think that they should go for Simmons, and Steph and Klay are strong enough on offense with Wiggins as a tertiary scorer, and they have Jordan Poole on the back end. I think that's enough offense to contend with most of these teams in the West, definitely in the East. And if you get another rotation scorer off the bench and one more big, that's a team that's built for success. That's a team that can defend anybody in the West. You got somebody that can match up with anyone, and you can probably outscore anybody, and you can try to keep up with somebody like the Nets, who are going to be in there next year when they're healthy, if they can stay healthy. If you can match Nets offense, you can match up with the Sixers, Bucks, you can match up with Trey's scoring, you can match up with the Hawks, you can match up with the Lakers next year if they're healthy. I just think that's the right option. Yeah, I think that's where they're going to go. Another team looking to trade is potentially the Trailblazers. Apparently, Dame is not happy with Chauncey being hired. I don't really get that, considering I've only heard good things about Chauncey Billups. Before the hiring, everybody was saying Chauncey deserves a chance. Everybody was saying behind the scenes, all the players love him. The other executives love him. He's super smart. He was a really great player. I don't understand it, but if Dame does want to be traded, all the power to him. I think players, if they aren't happy where they are, they should be able to voice that opinion. Yes, they signed the contract, but that's just not the way Adam Silver runs the NBA. And so if Dame's unhappy, he probably wants to just go to the number 1 contender. I'm sure he wants to go somewhere where he can still be the number 1 scoring option. I would assume the Trailblazers want to send him to the East so that they don't have to go up against him, considering how much of a killer instinct he has already. Anytime he has to go up against the Trailblazers, he's going to be dropping at least 40, or he's just going to be showing up with a ton of threes, just raining down. Even if that doesn't add up to 40, he's going to make sure to give it to the team that he wants to give it to. So Trailblazers, if they want to send him east, I could see him going for somebody like a Simmons and them pairing up Lillard with Tobias Harris and Embiid. Then Tobias can go down to that tertiary scoring option where he really should be as opposed to a number 2. And I don't want to see that. I could see it. I don't want to. I think that is a quick fix for both teams, but the Sixers would have to throw in some of their good rotation players that bring them back down from championship contender to just playoff contender, or they have to throw in assets, and those assets lead to future protection in case you get one of your stars like Embiid hurt again, and that doesn't really help the Blazers at all either. They get more rotational players. You have players that Simmons isn't going to be a top scoring option, and they don't need assets. They could turn those assets into somebody else, into another talented player, but eventually one team's going to get stuck with assets that you don't know. They're just an unknown. I don't think the Blazers want that, but really it's kind of hard because Lillard, you have to match that contract, and if you want to send him east, there's not a lot of teams in the east that have stars on long-term or expensive contracts that they are looking to get rid of, that the Blazers both get better or look good in the future, and that team looks good now and in the future. Obviously, if you can get Dame Lillard, most teams should be open to trading whoever they possibly can. I saw a couple of things today that were very funny. A lot of teams trying to recruit him already, trying to get him out of there. There was a tweet from 2012 that Damian Lillard said, talking about how he was heading to Minnesota. No, he's not heading there. No, I'm from Minnesota, and I can tell you now, there's no way that they can get Damian Lillard, and there's nobody on the team that, I mean, you could, sure, D'Angelo Russell, and like everybody says in Minnesota, you throw in Jarrett Culver for a bag of chips, but you could, like, they're not going to trade D'Angelo Russell. They don't have another pick this year to work with, and since they traded it this year, I believe they can't trade next year's pick either, first round, so they'd have to trade 2023's first round pick. I don't think the Blazers think D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jarrett Culver, that sort of package with one extra first round pick. I don't think that the Trailblazers are jumping at that, so yes, I think that one was just purely a joke. Well, however, for being from Minnesota, I would go to every single game if Damian Lillard was here, and if they end up getting moved to Seattle, I would still watch every game, and I would be a Seattle fan with Damian Lillard. There is no reason not to like Dame. He's a great rapper, he's a great player, he's a great leader. He is somebody you should want on your team, but a serious team in the West that if he were to say, I want to go there, I could see the Nuggets going for him. I don't see that working out for them, but I could see them reaching out. They have some rotation players that did not work out this year that you could probably move on from most of them for Dame. And if you get Jamal Murray, Dame, and Nikola Jokic, that pushes them past getting swept in the playoffs and pushes them into probably the top seed and probably the number 1 odds. I think the hardest part for the Blazers will be finding an equal value of contract, because most contracts of that size, teams don't want to get rid of those type of players, and if they do, that's probably not a good sign. I think in the end, Lillard's probably going to give Chauncey 1 year, and we'll see how this goes. I think they're going to be people are going to be proven wrong. Chauncey's going to do a great job, but the Blazers are still going to be stuck with their current roster. So even getting a little bit better, it'll be first round of playoffs, maybe second round at best, but that's as far, like, Lillard's proven. That's about as far as you can go if you get him plus no number 2, no number 3. CJ McCollum is a great player. Some people say it. When the Blazers were doing well, people were saying CJ McCollum is a 1 or a 2. He's a 1 disguised as a 2. No. And now people are saying, oh, he's a 4. I think that's exaggerating too. I think CJ McCollum is a 2 or 3 option. But when you don't have a 3, he's not a 2 that you want. And if you don't have a 4, he's not a 3 that you want. He's a great scorer, and that's about it. And he's another good player. So I think another good person. So when you have somebody like Dame and CJ, you have good scoring, good leadership. You just need more people. And Chauncey's going into a situation that might make it a little difficult. Finally, if he doesn't go there, last little thing on Dame here, the Celtics, I think, would be a wonderful option. I think that's where Bradley Beal's going to go. I think Beal's going to end up as a Celtic, not Dame, but that would be a wonderful fit with them. They need a point guard. They need another reliable scorer and somebody that can go in the crunch time when maybe Tatum's having an off night. So yeah, if I were to say where I want him to go, either stay with the Blazers Blazers or go to Celtics. Where I think he'll go is probably stay with the Blazers. And yeah, I think that's really about it for Dame. In terms of Timberwolves, like I mentioned, the only thing they got is Olympians. If you did not see, the Timberwolves actually have 5 players that are going to be playing in the Olympics. They have Okogie, who'll be playing for Nigeria. You got Rubio and Hernan Gomez that'll play for Spain. Balmaro will be in Argentina. And you have a lot of Wolves being in the Olympics. Their assistant coach, Pablo Prigioni, is also going to be an assistant coach. So 4 players and a coach. Pretty cool. Love the international talent that is represented. That's about all the Wolves have, though. So while that's great, that's about it. I would love to talk more about the Wolves, but not only do they have nothing big to talk about outside of new ownership, but most of the time those rumors about trades and free agents do not pan out. So, that's the way it goes with them. We're going to call that it for the NBA talk, and let's talk about the primary focus of today's podcast, which will be Madden. Yes, this podcast is primarily about sports and video games, while Madden happens to be both, and this year is supposed to be a big deal. This year they did a primary focus on the franchise mode, which happens to be the mode that I prefer. I think MUT is kind of just a money grabber. It's where a lot of their money is made. It's where a lot of content creators and YouTubers make their money, but it's really just not that great of a game mode in my opinion. I know you can, for the people that do play MUT, I'm glad you enjoy it. It's just really the collection aspect, in my opinion, is fun, but the money that needs to be spent to get those fun players and the amount of time spent, I would much rather see if I can build a team of current players, and that's franchise mode. So franchise mode last year, they said, we're going to do a little bit of a focus this year, and then next year, which would be this year, is going to be our big deal. So this has been in the works for over a year. Now, if you're going to tell me that you've spent 2 whole games worth of focus on a particular mode, and last year it was Fixed Madden franchise was trending for more than a day straight, it's clear the players, a large amount of player base, it's actually the majority of the player base, is looking for an improvement. And most people, Madden 14, Madden 15, Madden 05, those were the games where it actually was a good mode and it was actually entertaining for them to play it. There was a lot of customizable features. However, I do just want to flat out say, a lot of people are saying I want to make custom stadiums. I want to make custom jerseys, custom teams. The NFL actually put in their contract with EA that is not possible. You cannot put that in the game. So while you want that to happen, I want that to happen too. It's not possible unless they do another restructure of the contract, which probably won't happen for another 5 to 10 years. So that'll go out. Classic teams, I think that's pretty easy. I'm not sure about the legality of classic players. It's probably only players that would be part of the Players Association or part of the current Veterans Players Association. So even if they had classic players, it might not be the ones that everybody wants. And in terms of classic jerseys that people are wanting, I think that shouldn't be an issue. If there's a copyright issue, the NFL would have the money to do so. It probably wouldn't be very much. And the only reason they probably aren't doing this is because it wouldn't be a return on investment. If they wanted that returns, they could obviously do those sorts of things as DLC, but with making the game more expensive for next gen already, and people already claiming that they have too many things that you have to buy, like with MUT, turning that into a DLC, you would have to only have it be $1 to $5 for, here you go. You want to play as the Rams with their classic jersey. You want to play with the Packers as their original jerseys. You want to do any of that? Here you go. $2 and you get the jersey package for one team. Or $5 and you get, or $10, whatever, and you get the entire NFL's full jersey package. I could see something like that, but that's not happening. It's just not a lot of return on investments, but that would be my idea. Franchise mode. Let's get into that. They have a ton of information that they put out on this year, and it does look like they've done a major revamp on it, and I am quite excited. I think a lot of people will be surprised, but there are some things that were a little disappointing. That, it's expected. You can't expect them to perfect something on the first try. I think you can have very high expectations, especially when they told us that it was over a year in advance of work. You should be able to put out a high quality product, which it looks like they did. At worst, this looks like a 6 out of 10. Maybe that doesn't sound great to you, but in terms of recent franchises, I think a 6 out of 10 is a major improvement. The first thing is that they added a deeper coaching staff. That's been a huge request. I know that was one thing that I've asked them for. They added offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and player personnel. There is going to be the availability of, after the season is over, people that were not re-signed as the head coach. You can make them a coordinator, which I think is awesome. I want to see how that works out if they already have good stats and skill points, which we'll talk about in a little bit, towards is Mike Zimmer, he doesn't get re-signed by the Vikings as a coach. Is he already maxed out on the defensive side and his offensive skill points are really not that great? So if you put him as defensive coordinator, it's basically like having two head coaches. Is it like a really strong feature? Time will tell. I would love to see more on that. I am very excited about the former head coaches and becoming coordinators. Now, the staff points that I mentioned, for those who are focusing on rebuilding the teams, I personally, that's what I like to do. I like to go in, make a lot of trades, pick up some free agents, not like in the cheesy way where you pick up every strong free agent, trade them all for first round picks, and then you can just draft every player. I think honest rebuilds are really fun, and I think a lot of franchise people play with honest rebuilds in mind. The player personnel skill points is going to be the primary focus if you're going to want to do this. The player personnel talent tree has a huge focus on roster building. You can get skill points towards trading for older players, where you can make it easier for drafting a player over a certain age or that's been in the NFL for a certain amount of time, which I think is really strong, and signing veterans, because if you're going for, say you're a content creator, YouTuber, that one season, or if you do like I see a lot of people do where they sim one season and then they rebuild. With those skill points, it seems like it would be very easy to get a lot of strong talent for one solid season. If you get those guys that still have 3-4 good years left, depending on how the game randomly generates their decline, again, we'll talk about that in a second, you could make a really solid team. And it's nice because if you have a favorite vet that currently is on another team and he doesn't get re-signed, you can sign him for a good amount of years, probably for a decent price, because you've focused on those staff points. And a lot of things, there's also scheme fit that you can put on. That is pretty huge. That is now affecting certain players. So you can, if a player doesn't fit your scheme fit, that is a huge part in whether or not they want to sign with you. I think that makes total sense. I think you have like Jadeveon Clowney, free agent almost every year, and you see him go to 3-4 teams a lot. And when he was on the Texans, he was a 4-3. Then they moved to 3-4, got a lot of success. Anyway, if you have a guy like Jadeveon Clowney and your team runs a 4-3, he's probably not going to be that interested in signing with you. That makes way more sense than him just signing, I'm going to sign with this team, and then you have two studs on the edge already, so you move him to defensive tackle, and now he's your 96 overall defensive tackle, but it makes no logical sense. I like the logical side of that scheme fit signing with you, and I believe that that's another thing with the player personnel where you can make staff points so that they don't need to be as strong of a scheme fit, and you can make their interest higher even with there not being a scheme fit. So that, again, that player personnel staff points for rebuilding, I honestly believe that's going to be 90% of where people put their staff points or want to put their staff points. And I know I'll be checking that out. I'm going to try spamming the player personnel staff points on my first rebuild and see how that goes. Probably let you guys know when that episode comes out, and I'll probably put up a YouTube video of it. Same Glacier Gamble. Go ahead and check that out. Also, with that staff points, it comes with a talent tree. So you mark those staff points, you unlock one of their abilities, and then that breaks off into other skills, and there's that talent tree. But certain ones, if you use them, it locks the other one. I love that. I think there's some completionists out there that are gonna want, I wanted to unlock everyone. Well, that's just, it's more fun to have a higher skill set or a higher skill cap, and locking the skill tree makes it so you need to pay attention to where that goes. Like, you need to pay attention. Hey, I want to focus on running the ball up the middle. I want strength pass blocking. Well, you can't have power pass blocking and finesse pass blocking be a primary focus. I mean, like, logically, that'd be like saying I have two primary focuses. No, it's primary, so it's only one. The idea of that locking, again, it's just another logical change that makes a lot of sense. I'm a big fan of it, and I am excited to see where that goes. I want to get some more updates on that. I will definitely be checking it out. And then there are a few of those talents. They have some specialty talents they talked about. They do seem very strong, so I'm sure you'll only be able to have one or two, but there was ones called renewable talents. The renewable talents are ones that you can get that seem to be for like a week or a season. So this renewable talent is maybe increased block shedding, or this renewable talent is reduced fatigue, something along those lines. There weren't a ton of details about it, but they'd have to be really good value to be really worth it. Yeah, I feel like they'd need really good value. The ultimate talents are another one. Those seem to be the ones that are very strong, which is why the renewable talents really seem to have to be worth it, because those staff points are going to be valuable. And in order to be reusing them where they're going to disappear with those renewable talents, I'm going to want something like an advantage. So maybe Super Bowl week, if you can use them there, probably there. But the ultimate talents, you can get all the way up to adding additional focus players. That's my favorite thing, because with training, if you want to play 5-6 seasons, I personally like doing elongated seasons, elongated franchises, and getting extra focus really helps those young guys. When you're doing a rebuild, that means you're probably loading up your team with 23-year-olds, 25-year-olds, players that you probably really liked in the draft. If you add them as your focus, that means they're going to get increased skills. They're going to get increased experience. They're going to grow faster. They're going to get higher overall sooner. And then you can watch your favorite players succeed. And that's really the benefit of it. And you can get up to 6 of those total. So right now, every year it's been 3 that they've had it. And 3's been great, but it really makes you have to pick certain ones. I think 6 is a wonderful amount. I think 6 is exactly what you're looking for. You have those few young players on your team that you really like, plus the few rookies that you're excited for, and maybe somebody that you traded for that you want to be your star. And having those 6 people to focus on is just, it's like that perfect amount. And again, that's an ultimate talent. So it seems like something you're really going to have to work for, and you won't be able to have 6 right away, which is too bad, but it's something that's probably the one that I'll be running on. And then beyond those renewable talents and the talents in general, they're also going to have auto-generated coaches, and they'll vary in skill. So those auto-generated coaches that you can hire will have their own staff points already spent, and you will start with your first hire. You'll get a set amount of staff points that you'll be able to spend on them initially right away. So I'm interested to see, like, are there going to be super strong coaches? Is there going to be a coach that shows up and this randomly generated coach has all the best talents right away, plus you get some staff points? Is that going to be broken right away? Is that something that they're going to have to patch or fix? And since they do vary in skill, are there going to be a lot that are just terrible and there's no sense in even hiring them? And will it be like current scouting, where there's just way more good, like there's way too many good coaches compared to bad ones? Like in current scouting, you can draft guys all the way through the draft that end up as 99 overalls in a season or two, or you draft a 75 overall halfback with hidden development because no other team was drafting halfbacks anymore, and they were just drafting 20 O-linemen, and they drafted no fullbacks, that sort of thing. And I'm interested to see with their purchase staff points, how far down the tree do they go with the auto-generated ones? Are they all the way to ultimate skills, or is there a set amount? Or is that restricted to previous head coaches that are now options as assistant and coaches and coordinators? Also, you only get to hire, the extra staff points is only 1 hire per season. Then you have to wait till the next season to get those additional staff points, so you can't just hire them, get rid of them, hire somebody else, and then stock up staff points and have a maxed out coach right away. You can't do that. They already said that. The former coaches as coordinators, you do have to go through the whole first season, and then you'll be able to do that. Obviously, they're not going to fire a coach before season starts, except for the user-controlled coach. This is all franchise updates that aren't going to happen until September, and that's just when they're projected or expected. So just because you get the game, all these features are not available until September, or most of them are not available until September. So You will have to restart your franchise in September. These updates for the scouting updates, if you're interested in scouting, obviously you should be. It's a completely new scouting system, so you should want to try it out. That doesn't happen until September. When you do get that, you have to reset this franchise. It won't be something that carries on. That's a big question that a lot of people had. You will have to restart the franchise. So in the franchise, they added week-to-week planning. It's incredible. It will require a better user against the computer, which I think is great. It seems like the computer is going to have a lot better of a system, be more intelligent. And if you set the week-to-week planning as, I am going to run power run against the team, the computer will adapt to what you're using, which means outside of obviously like rookie, which is probably going to be like arcade mode where just you can score as many points as you want. Rookie's not that great. It'll actually be a harder opponent and very important to have an actual game plan. You can automate that, but it'll actually make a little bit more fun to have to user against a computer. And I think it was a need because in the past it was very simple to exploit and play against computers, exploit bugs, exploit like for one whole game. You could run a drag route and always be open, and that's just not fun to just constantly run drag routes and knock up stats, and all of a sudden you have 10 record breakers on one season. 90 plus overall quarterbacks should be difficult to play against now because they can adjust the game planning. So that makes me glad Peyton Manning isn't in the game anymore, because they would probably continue knocking it down to 1 second on the play clock, and he would adjust to whatever you adjust to. So I'm excited to see how that goes. You're going to have Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady's that are going to actually be harder to play against than rookie quarterbacks or low overall quarterbacks. Those quarterbacks are going to adjust, and it's going to be actually quite exciting to play against. And you can now quick call your game plan. So when you hit quick play and just provide the plays that you want to use, the game will provide ones that are tailored to what your game plan for the week was. So if you did automate it, it'll automate what it says is your suggested game plan. It'll be suggested plays. When you don't automate it, it'll actually give you plays from the playbook that match that, which I think is also great. The opponent tendencies now are going to be listed, which is going to be helpful for new players who have difficulty reading defenses and they don't necessarily pay attention to that. I think that's going to be a great help, so you'll know, oh, your opponent blitzes on this down line. Oh, on 3rd and long, your opponent always blitzes. On 3rd and long, your opponent always does a screen pass, or does a screen pass 8 out of 10 times. And those tendencies will be listed. Now, if you have a harder time reading those offensive schemes or defensive sets, it's kind of helping you along, walking that along the way, holding your hand a little bit. But for some players, especially younger players, they might need that. I think it's going to be pretty helpful, especially in more complex sets or as they add more schemes to the game. Also, fatigue now carries over, and it makes the injury and toughness rating actually seem a little bit more meaningful. In the past, it seems like just this additional stat that isn't really necessary, but now it actually seems to actually mean something. And speed rating actually decreases as the game goes on, so you can't have an opponent run the ball every single play. I know that was an issue in like competitive Madden. There was somebody who ran without a quarterback one season just because the running was that overpowered. Well, now if you run the ball with Derrick Henry every play, by the end of the game, Derrick Henry can't even hit 90 speed because he's tired. I think that's a huge aspect of reality that was needed in the game, and another thing that's a little bit more realistic that is something to look forward to. It also makes having a backup running back and tertiary running back really nice, that they actually get to be useful in the game. You don't have a 3rd string running back that's basically just a roster spot or a special teamer or a special package guy. Like, you might actually be using that 2nd and 3rd stringer more often, and that's great. And it actually carries over to the next week, so I think that's pretty incredible. I'm not sure a lot of people are going to love it. I think most people should, just because the more realism they can make, it actually provides a more interesting and fun experience. And I also like the new training, but it's now just available in the beginning of the year. So it's all available at the beginning, and then practice and everything is simply simmed. It's simmed after you set what you want for the season, so there's no more doing it every week, but that's kind of nice. It makes it a little less monotonous. You have those specific things they are going to tell you to do. You're going to have the list of bullet points on the side that will tell you what you're supposed to do for the day and for the week, and it's simply practice within the franchise itself. And it's a good little addition to it. You can now get practice injuries, though, which I'm not a huge fan of personally. I know it's more realistic, like I just said, but practice injuries, it says they're not going to be major. There'll be a 1 game or 2 games tops, but to lose your guy for a game that you were like specifically training, kind of rough. It seems like something that I don't want to have to turn injuries off, practice, turn injuries back on. So it'll be a little bit more realistic, but it seems a little bit RNG. And kind of just, that's one of those new features. Adds more, even though it adds more realism, I'm not as big of a fan of. I do like that it's not long term though. I think that's a major help because they know people aren't going to be huge fans of practice injuries. It's similar. A lot of players apparently had injuries off during the preseason and then turned them on during the regular season. I feel people are going to feel similarly about practice injuries. Players actually with the tiredness can be more tired on a short week. Like if you have a Thursday night game, they have less of those rehab days and that tiredness. So Derrick Henry could only get that 89 speed. His tiredness actually carries over, so on Thursday night he doesn't have that full speed rating. I think that's interesting. I think that's another one. It helps with the depth of your roster, but it's also one of those things that's a little bit more realistic. There are gonna, again, people aren't gonna be always happy about it. There's always somebody mad about it, about one of those features, but that's another little feature they added there, which is a little nicer. Again, makes that injury, toughness, and all those sorts of ratings actually feel meaningful. And again, same with Monday. They have an extra recovery day, more likely to be fully rested. And all of those settings, by the way, everything can be automated. So if you don't want to deal with any of that, just turn it on auto. I like the manual just because it's more fun to tinker. They have press conferences and cinematics now. They seem a little unimpressive, but they'll probably be improved in future games. Not necessary. Should be interesting though. You can activate X factors at the start of a game if you finish certain goals, I think, and challenges. That's pretty fun. Or you can have an entire game with an X factor on. I think in terms of like seasons, that's those record breaking games. Like you have Aaron Donald with his X factor on the entire game. He gets 8 sacks in a game, something ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see how that gets tweaked, if there's going to be any that are way too strong to have an X factor on all game, but that means you completed a challenge. So I'm ready to see how that turns out. And I do kind of like that. You can also complete certain scenarios and players can jump multiple developments. So it won't automatically go from star, superstar, X Factor. You can have a star player become an X Factor if you do well on a challenge, which I think is great because there were times in the previous Madden that you could have your goal be get 200 yards and 2 touchdowns with no fumbles or something like that. And your player, or 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. And your player gets 200 yards and 3 touchdowns or something just ridiculous. And instead of becoming an X Factor, they became that star because you did it. I like that change, being able to jump multiple development traits. And then there's also a league tab that can keep updates on top players. That's a nice addition, so you can keep track. Is my running back top of the league, or is there some running back like Derrick Henry that is just 300 yards ahead of me already and it's only week 2? I think that's a fun little thing to keep track of. You don't have to go specifically to the stats page. It's just a tab that you can scroll over and look at all of the top players. That's a nice addition. Draft class generation, back to scouting. Draft class generation's been completely updated, so the top 10 are significantly better, and there's better development traits for everybody picked in the top 3 rounds, but nothing has been stated about the lower quality of the remaining players. I thought there were too many good players throughout the draft and too many that could become good players too soon. It's not really realistic considering the amount of undrafted free agents that are currently in the league in real life compared to what happens in franchise, where after 5-6 seasons, everybody is a rookie that's been drafted. Everybody's been drafted except for the current young players because of how good they are right away when they come in and how good they get. So I would like to hear some more about that, but there are less hidden developments beyond round 3 and better developments within the top 3 rounds and way better in the top 10. So it should help the scouting and draft experience a lot. They've made all players basically harder to trade for, and top players, similar to like NBA 2K, if any of you play that, where they say that, oh, we're not interested in trading this player. There will be players like Patrick Mahomes. You could give up 2 first-round picks and a 99 overall, and they won't take it. So they're going to make most players harder to train for, no matter about what staff points you use, any of it. So overall, my big question from Madden is, if it's your primary mode that you play, is it even worth purchasing before September? Because without that scouting update, there's a lot of fun stuff to mess with, but you don't get the full new experience. Most people that want to play it probably will, and then they'll start a new franchise with being familiar with some of the new features. I think that's a smart option, but I do think a lot of people, if scouting and building future seasons beyond the first season is the focus, September and beyond seems to be the best time to purchase. And I would say, I think that's fair. I think waiting, getting some results, hearing what people have to say first, then purchasing it. That's smart to do with any purchase, and I think that's what a lot of people are going to do, and I think that's fair. So let's move on with Madden. This was, like I said, pretty much a Madden episode due to so little being happening in sports. But this isn't just a sports podcast. I do want to discuss some things. I do like, just like Madden's a video game, I love video games, like nerdy things like Marvel, any comics. I like DC as well, so I'm not going to be picky. But any of those Marvel, any of those nerdy things, I am a big fan of. There are a few movie trailers that came out recently that I think look great, that I would love to see and recommend. The Suicide Squad, the one directed by James Gunn, the new one coming out, looks so good, and it looks so much better than the original. Unpopular opinion, I actually really liked Joker and Jared Leto's take on it. Yes, it wasn't true to the comics, and it was a unique take, and not a lot of people are big fans of Jared Leto. I liked it. I thought that in the scenes where he was there, he brought a new energy to the movie that it was kind of lacking. But anyway, beyond that, the new one looks very, very good. I love the new heroes they've decided to use, and I think the story actually seems more well-rounded, and it's not as dark. It just looks like a comic book movie that has some humor in it, which is necessary, but still has that action that you would expect from Suicide Squad. I think it's going to be incredible. I recommend when it comes out, go see it. If you haven't seen the trailer, very good. Doesn't give away the whole movie, which I don't like in trailers when they give it away, and it provides good insight on what it's going to look like. Shang-Chi, the trailer just released, and I got the chills during that trailer. When they were underwater and there was the dragon, people were saying it's called the Protector, but it sounds to me like that's a code name. I do not think that is the Protector. I definitely think that's Fin Fang Foom. Even if it's not, I'm hoping it is, because that's what I would prefer, and I really think if it is, that is amazing. The primary focus everybody's talking about is, oh, Abomination was in it. What does this mean? I couldn't get enough of. I kept pausing at Fin Fang Foom. I did watch it a few times. I think the look of it with the rings, all of the CGI is just impressive in general. It's a Marvel movie, so they have a high budget. That's another one. It has a great representation in terms of diversity. I'm very excited for that movie. I think it's going to be a great addition to the MCU, and I recommend you. That's another one. That's another one of these ones that I'd like to recommend. I'm obviously not going to tell you guys about movies that aren't good, so I do want to see Shang-Chi, and I think it's going to be incredible. I think A-Bomb could show a connection to the MCU. We might see maybe some hints on She-Hulk. We know that She-Hulk's going to be added. Maybe Abomination will be the transition, but while I don't think that's necessarily likely, it is a possibility, and with MCU and comics in general, those connections are always there, and I'm very interested to see what they decide to do in terms of connection. Maybe that's a post-credit scene sort of thing. I could definitely see that. I'm hoping that that's it, because I don't want to take away from the movie too much, and I'd like the focus to still mainly be on the primary story. But in terms of just the movie in general, it looks like it'd be another knockout that it probably won't be everybody's favorite of the new phase, but it's going to be one of the ones that people are talking about for a while, and it's going to be for many reasons. I think the visuals, the soundtrack, the story, and the potential are all huge. And then lastly, if you have any kids out there, even if you like animated movies, I personally love animated movies. Sing 2 trailer came out, and it looks like another one of those fantastic singing movies where the talent of Hollywood is really shown. Taron Egerton is one of my favorite people in Hollywood right now. He has a couple movies that were not received well, like his Robin Hood. I love them anyway because I think he has yet to do a movie where I think he did a bad job. And when he sings in the trailer, I got chills every time again. So it was just a couple trailers that I'm talking about. They gave me chills, which is why I want to tell you about them. And I definitely recommend you take your children to see it if you haven't seen the first one. They're really good in terms of as an adult watching. They have a good story. They send a good message, and you're not nervous like, oh, should my kid be watching these? If you're a little like nervous about that sort of thing. And you get to enjoy talent. You get to see talented people do amazing things. And Taron Egerton is somebody that I believe should be appreciated, and he did well in Rocketman. You got to hear his voice there. Yeah, I really think that's a movie that won't get the recognition it deserves when it comes out, and it deserves to, because we need to appreciate talent, whether that's sports, whether that's children, whether that's art, anything. It's awesome to see good talent, and I think Taron Egerton's a perfect example of that, and obviously the others in that movie as well. He's just the primary focus because he happens to be one of my favorite actors. Those are the only 3 movies that I feel that I saw recently. Most of the other movies that I would recommend are already out in theaters, so go ahead, check out your local theater. If there's any that you see there, go ahead and see them. I'm a big supporter. I think it's great to support movies. It's really the best way to experience it. There's some more Marvel stuff that we'll be talking about in the future. There is a co-host that will be on this show that we will be talking more about the nerdier things when he's here, just because it's a little bit more fun to bounce off those ideas when you have somebody else there. And we'll still be talking about sports, but we'll be getting some nerdier podcasts in the future. There's just not a ton of sports to talk about right now, and video games took a break due to COVID and production, but there'll be some more video game talk as well in the future. And to kind of sign out, and as we get to the end of this thing, there are a few more quick topic points here. Found out some interesting things I wanted to tell people just because I think it is fun. So the average hummingbird weighs less than a penny. That's pretty strange. You wouldn't think they're that light because it's not like they're made of air. I thought that was very, very interesting. And as well, back onto sports, Harlem Globetrotters sent a letter to Adam Silver to join the NBA as an expansion team. Obviously, I don't think that would happen, but thought that was very interesting. Amazon is no longer drug testing their employees for marijuana. As it gets legalized over the country, I can see more and more big businesses doing so, and I think Amazon, with their poor reviews, especially as of late, of what it's like to work there, something like this will probably increase some of their applicants. I think that's a good way to bring in new hires. So on the next episode of the podcast, or at least a upcoming episode, either the next one or the one following that, we'll be talking about the Nets and their situation and what they plan to do next year and what we believe they should do next year. We'll be talking about the Bills, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. We have a fun little discussion topic regarding that. Love to hear if you guys have an opinion. We'll be discussing if Josh Allen is elite, or did Stephon Diggs kind of make him? I would love to hear what you think. And we'll be talking about, in a fantasy draft of Madden, if who would you take number 1 overall in the next season or in the next game. We'll also be talking about WandaVision and whether or not that change at the end of the final credit scene, was that a render issue? What was it? Feel free to let me know what you think it was. If it was Doctor Strange, White Vision, just a render issue, feel free to let me know. And we'll be talking about potential redrafts of the NBA and the NFL, what's different seasons. Probably let you know some of our favorite heroes and villains in the future, and we'll obviously have we want to hear from you on what your favorites are when that time comes. And we'll also be talking about a fun topic of what would your ideal post-credit scene be for certain Marvel movies and just comic book movies in general that are coming out, what your ideal credit scene will be. So look forward to those episodes. They should be coming out. We're going for weekly or bi-weekly, so 1 to 2 episodes a week to start out, and then once the NFL season kicks off, we will be going to daily episodes that should be coming out in the morning. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you for listening. Make sure to go out there, make a difference. I think it's very important to have an impact on people. The merit of any work done is really not enough, and it's not good enough on its own. You need a fanatical group of people to help you move along, and you listeners as fans are the ones that move it forward. I am not doing this podcast for myself. I am doing it because I'm hoping that it interests the people listening. I'm hoping that it brings entertainment. I'm hoping that it brings some funniness as it goes along. And yeah, as this picks up, as we get more into the flow of things, I am looking forward to interacting with the fans, and I believe that nothing is good without support and hearing what you have to say and what you think. If you want to let me know right away, feel free to check it out on social media. I'm on Twitter and YouTube at Glazier Gamble. There's a gaming channel that'll be Glazier Gaming, so feel free to follow or tweet or comment at me there. The full podcast will be available on YouTube. So again, looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you for listening. Make a difference. Cheers.